Welcome back. For decades, the U.S. government has outlawed marijuana, classifying it as an illegal drug. But it's quickly gaining acceptance as a medicine where it's sold legally to people in several states. Campaigners in Illinois now believe they've crafted a piece of legislation that would allow the distribution of marijuana only to patients who can genuinely use it for pain relief. America's Now contributing correspondent Craig Morrow brings us this report.
Excuse me, sir. Thank you very much.
Marianne Longcar and Mike Graham are working the rails in the lingo of Illinois' state capitol. In other words, they're doing some old-fashioned political lobbying.
And what everybody does here is they're from different corporations or they have different causes. Ours is HB 30, which is the medical cannabis bill, and we're 2 votes short. And we've been 2 votes short for 2 years. And we come down and we try to get the legislators out of their offices or out of their chambers. So we put a card in and they come out and we talk to them.
The bill HB 30 would allow patients in Illinois with certain diseases like cancer, AIDS, and multiple sclerosis to use marijuana or cannabis as medicine.
Here's a drug that the side effects is severe kidney damage. Here's a narcotic that it's liver damage.
Mike Graham suffers from degenerative disc disease and has a morphine pump surgically implanted in his back. Before he started using marijuana, he took a cocktail of 14 pharmaceutical drugs to treat his condition.
I used to be hospitalized 4 or 5 times a year due to the side effects and the compounding effects of all these drugs. I haven't been hospitalized in 3 years since I've been off of all these, other than my normal operations.
Illinois would be the 18th U.S. state to pass a medical marijuana law. So far, almost all of the laws on the books allow patients suffering from, quote, chronic pain or nausea to use the drug. Critics say that description is too vague and leaves too much room for interpretation, allowing non-deserving patients to get legal access to marijuana. And despite the mishmash of state laws across the country, federal U.S. law still classifies marijuana as an illegal substance. The legal discrepancies have created confusion. States like California, which enacted the country's first medical cannabis law, raids on dispensaries are not uncommon. California federal prosecutor Melinda Haag says criminals are exploiting what is supposed to be a medicinal trade.
The law has been hijacked by profiteers who are motivated not by compassion, but by money. Even under California law, marijuana cultivation is supposed to be not-for-profit. What we are finding, however, is that people are using the cover of medical marijuana to make extraordinary amounts of money, in short, to engage in drug trafficking.
Other opponents take issue with the very idea of medical marijuana. Peter Benzinger directed the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency in the late 1970s and early 80s. He says the U.S. government's Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, should be the final arbiter on deciding what is a medicine, and not state legislatures or the public.
When you and I go to the pharmacy or drugstore and we get some medicine, it's been approved by the FDA. They know the potency, they know the side effects, they know the quantity, and they know the milligrams of each pill. The FDA has looked at marijuana and said it doesn't qualify, that it's not safe or effective.
Despite that, voters in Michigan, just to the east of Illinois, decided in 2008 that marijuana should be considered medicine. A referendum on the matter passed with 63% of the votes. Even though they're now legal under state law, many marijuana dispensaries in Michigan operate out of unmarked buildings like this one in Detroit, for fear of attracting too much attention.
Then here's the raw bud, which has...
Jamie Lowell runs a compassion center in the town of Ypsilanti, where local authorities have been permissive. He estimates that about 2,000 patients have obtained marijuana here from caregivers or marijuana suppliers. Lowell believes that legal ambiguities surrounding medical cannabis leave many in his trade vulnerable.
What it's come down to here in Michigan is where you are means everything. So if the prosecutors want to be aggressive against us, they just don't like it or don't understand it for whatever reason, or if the sheriffs don't like it or don't understand it, you know, they are aggressive against it, and they let the courts sort it out later. I mean, they don't really even seem to be concerned that they're acting in defiance of the will of the people and the clear law that exists.
Back in Illinois, activist Mike Graham says the legislation he's pushing for accounts for loopholes found in other states and would eliminate the potential for abuse. Graham estimates that about 10,000 patients suffering from conditions specified in the law would use the drug if it's legalized medically in Illinois. Eric Berlin is a lawyer at a prestigious firm in downtown Chicago who suffers from Crohn's disease, an inflammatory bowel condition. He's helped Graham and Longcar advocate for the Illinois legislation.
The bill would set up very few, essentially, pharmacies for dispensing medical cannabis. And the new bill got rid of home grow and various other things that concern people. And the only thing now we have is, I think it's 1 or 2 dispensaries, people know them by, but they would be different here, in each district. And it would all be regulated and licensed.
Skeptical at first, Berlin turned to cannabis as a pain reliever after doing extensive research on the scientific evidence.
Do I risk something to feel better that may actually help me get back up on my feet, help me manage my life like a normal person with the threat of arrest? And once I read all the scientific support for this, and once I talked to a lot of other patients, folks who have Crohn's, folks who have cancer, folks who have MS, folks who have other debilitating medical conditions that cannabis has been found to help, I felt it was really wrong that the government is preventing people from getting something that can help them with their relief.
The American Cancer Society and the National Multiple Sclerosis Society have mixed conclusions about the efficacy of using marijuana's cannabinoid compounds for pain relief. They recognize some potential benefits, but also say there should be more research. A 1999 report by the independent nonprofit Institute of Medicine is generally considered the most comprehensive study to date on the medical uses of cannabis. The report stated that the accumulated data indicate a potential therapeutic value for cannabinoid drugs, particularly for symptoms such as pain relief, control of nausea, and vomiting. Though the report went on to call the drug's effects generally modest and said, in most cases, there are more effective medications.
So the signals can't get through properly.
But many patients like Julie Falco in Chicago say they just haven't found anything that's more effective.
I know it already works for me. It saved my life, basically. In 2004, I was ready to check out. And it wasn't until I finally made those 1-inch cube-sized little pieces of brownie and took them 3 times a day, like regular medication, I was like, I'm not depressed anymore. Wow, I'm feeling better from this. I'm actually walking a little better, too. I'll keep this up for a while.
Falco was one of the first to begin lobbying in Springfield, Illinois' state capital. She says she's given up hope now on getting a bill passed and is considering moving to California or Michigan after living in Illinois her entire life.
And it's like, forget it. If that's the way I can help and come back here and show, look at the difference I made of, like, in my condition, I have to get out of Illinois. It's killing me.
As in other states, it's not clear how things would play out here if the state eventually does enact a medical cannabis law.
Well, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Illinois has been asked by State Treasurer Dan Rutherford, what's your position on this? And the answer came back very clearly. Department of Justice will enforce federal law regardless of state laws. So where there have been a lot of flagrant violations of selling and trafficking in marijuana and growing it in large quantities, DEA has raided in Oregon and California and other states and is likely to do the same here.
The truth is on our side. As cliche as that sounds, we fight against people all the time who are in positions of power. And it's very difficult with the kind of resources and influence those people have to oppose them. But the more states that come on, the more even smaller victories that we have at a local government or in court or something, all inches us closer. And I think the ultimate goal has to be now is complete federal recognition.
Inching closer is exactly what Marianne Longcar and Mike Graham are content to do. They've been 2 votes short for a while, but they still make the 4-hour drive from Chicago to Springfield at least once a month.
So we come down here on our own time and our own money. We don't have campaign money for this. We have personal passion.
This is quality of life, and it's our quality of life, and we're not going to go away until this law is passed.